Continue to finish chapter 5. We will talk about how to use file as a data storage. So this one actually we have two topics. We will read from a text file. Then we can write into a text file. So we will talk about both. So one thing is we were using the file for the data storage. So far, we only learn how to using the cin to get the user input so we can process the data. Then we use the cout to output to the console. So in this section, we will talk about instead using the user input, we can just read from a file. So this file actually we call that a text file. So we can read from the text file line by line, or we can write into a text file. So let's see how to do that. So using the file instead of using the keyboard monitor screen for the program input and output, that's earlier we talked about. Because remember, when you're using the keyboard for the input, we're using cin. So then when we're using the monitor, monitor as the output, then we do the cout. So those cin and cout, remember that's from the ifstream. So we default has that the cin and cout object. But now instead of using the keyboard and monitor, we were using the files. So we will see how to write and read into the file. So you will allow data to retain between program running. So remember, you see before when we use the cin or cout, once your program finishes, those data are gone. The advantage to using the file to do the data storage, that's because we can have the data retained even after the program finish. Because remember, when you have a text file, you can just open that. So then you can also modify that using the text editor. So that's the benefit we're using the files. So when you're using a file in C++ to read and write, you have the step we need to follow. The first thing, we need to open the file. You also need to tell the compiler where is the location. Then you need to tell the compiler how you want to use the file. You can read from the file, or you want to write to the file, or you can do both. But after you're done, don't forget you need to close the file. So then you can see actually this one is very simple too. We're using any software, right? So for example, you see now I'm using a PowerPoint file. So that's why when you do the PowerPoint file, you need to go to open the file. Okay, yes. Okay, I know because here my header is on the top because I'm using the Mac. So usually you need to open the file, then you're doing something. After you're done, you close the file. So that's why the same thing in C++, we write the code, we need to do exactly the same thing like that. Okay, so let's continue to see how should we do that. So in order to process the file, so then one thing is we need to include the library. So this library we call fstream. So did you see this one? Very similar. Before when we're using the cin cout, remember we have ifstream. Right, so string actually is an object in C++ how we will process the data. So since we are working on the files, so we do the fstream. So after you include the fstream, they have couple default objects. The first one, they have ifstream. So this ifstream is an object type. So that's for the input. Yeah, because you can see here, right? F represent file. So I represent input. So I want to read from a file. Then before you want to read from a file, you need to create an ifstream object. So then we can open the file for reading. Then the other one, okay, so that means use different colors so you will see the difference. Okay, so then the other one, you see you have all fstream object. So this ofstream is for the output to the file. So when we say the output is write to a file. Or you have fstream. So this fstream actually including the I and the O, they can read and write to the file. But one thing, be careful for this class. We don't talk about fstream, because when we do the fstream, you need to write to a binary file. So that's a little different. So before I give you the example, let me tell you the first thing on what is different between binary file and what is we say. You see here, when we say read from a file and write to the file. But in the topic I told you, we talk about in this class, when we read and write, we read and write to a text file. So what is the text file? What is a binary file? So the binary file, let me give you the example. For example, did you know what is the file extension for a PowerPoint file? For example, now I'm opening a PowerPoint file, right? Okay, so what is the file extension for the PowerPoint file? Right, the PPT, right? Also PPTX. Okay, so that's why here, let me show you from my file explorer. Okay, so you can see here is my COMSC110 folder. I have the lecture file. For me, I'm using the PPTX file to give you the lecture. Then after I'm done, I save that in PDF file. So when we say the PPTX file, that's specific, the file we need to using the PowerPoint software to open that, right? And the same thing, your PDF file, you need to using the Adobe Reader to read the file. So those kind of file is we call the binary file. So the binary file actually, without application, you cannot read that. So then the binary file specific, they need to have specific software to read that. If you're using regular text editor, you cannot see that. So that's the binary file. So on the other hand, the other example, you see your Word document, docx, or your Excel file. They need to have a specific software to open that. And sometimes you're using the Mac system, so you have page, you have numbers. Yeah, the other one also for the presentation. So that's those file, they are binary file. They need to using specific software to open that. So those binary file we will talk about in your next class, 165. So in our 110 intro C++, we only do the text file. So then what is text file? So the text file, let me give you the example. Text file, actually the CPP file is one kind of text file because you can using any text editor. So here the text editor I talk about is like Notepad in Windows system or just the Note in the Mac system. They are not really specific special software. So here when we have the text file, so CPP file, or here you have the TXT file. So most of the time when we save the text file, we're using the .txt as the file extension. So this TXT file, you can use in any text editor. They are able to open that. And also you can see in our example, we were using that later in this text file. We call list of number.txt file. So this TXT file, you can see they only have the number like one by one. They don't have any format. You see, like we say PowerPoint file have format because you have different font and also you can add picture. So Excel file, you have table. Word document, you can make the font and different color or add table. So that they have specific format. They need to using the specific software to open that. But when we say the text file, they only have plain text. So that's the text file we will use for this class. So all the input and output object, when they open the file, they need to open only the text file. Okay, so that's we here on the about the text file and the binary file, the difference. So then here, let's show you, after you include fstream library, how to define your ifstream and ofstream. So here you see ifstream, they just like the data type. So they are a class. The class, we will talk about the same thing. What the class mean, we will talk about in 165. But now for now, you just remember the ifstream just like a data type. It's the object type. So after you define this object type, so then you give them the object variable name. So then we say in file, for example. So then the same thing, if we want to create an output file object, you're using the ofstream. So ofstream is one object type. So then I declare the variable is output file variable name. So here we only declare the object variable. So after you have this object variable name, so you have the one ifstream object. So then you have one ofstream object. So using this object, how you will open specific file. So then you will see they will do the ifstream is object name. Then dot is the member function from the ifstream. So then when you say open, then in the parentheses, you will pass in a string. So that's why you see here is double quote. So here the string, we will open the inventory.dat file. So the .dat, the keyword, the file extension is another example we're using for the text file. So that's here is I create an ifstream object. So then I try to open the file called inventory.dat file. So after I open this file, so then I will read line by line from this file. So the same thing, I have out file. This one is ofstream object. So then I can open the file name. The same thing, your file name, here just the file name is a string. So here in your double quote, you just need to specify your file name. So that's the report.txt file. So I will open this output file. So later I can write to the file. And also in this class, I only want you to put only the file name. So later I will show you where should we save those files. So the output file should be created. So then they will create that and write information. And the input file, because we need to read, so they need to be exist before we open the input file. So output file, actually, after we want to write the information, we will create, the compiler will create that file and save. But when we want to read something from the input file, this file needs to be exist. So that's why sometimes when you open the file, maybe the file is not there. So we need to know, did you really save the file in the correct location? So that's why here, usually that's how we check. So after you try to open the file, so here we're using another file name. I have my ifstream object create. So then I open the file. I want to open the file name called test.txt file. But after you're done, then you don't know what happened, right? So sometimes we don't know what happened if we don't know if we open correctly. So that's why you always need to add this code block after you open the input file. Because if the input file didn't be opened correctly, so this if object, they will return a false return value. So if not false, that's mean. If that open correctly, so then you can see, because if this one return false, right? So then false, not false means true. So that's we say if not false, so then this one become true. So I will show you. Then the cout file open fail. So this one can tell us actually your txt, the test.txt file actually is not exist in that location. Or sometimes people were using the fail member function. So you can do the if.fails. So this fail member function, they will return 1 if the file cannot open. Otherwise, they will return 0. So the same thing, this one you can replace with the if in files.fails. So they will be the same.